Okay, this is kind of weird because I'm talking to you through a computer screen, but that's okay. Go ahead and have your portfolio open to page 15, which is the blue sheet on purpose. And I want you to take about 60 seconds and write in the box to the left what you know about purpose. If you were to be asked, how does the author develop his or her purpose? What does that mean? So go ahead and take a minute and write what you know. Okay, it's been about a minute. Let me just start by saying if at any point during this video you feel like I'm going too fast or you maybe missed something, I mean, the good thing about it being on a video is that you can pause it and go back and rewatch something. So, like I said, if I go too fast, just pause it and you can catch up that way. Also, you can just ask me because I'm probably walking around behind you right now. Okay, so in the box to the right, this is what I want you to write down about purpose. The purpose, the definition is that it's the reason the author writes something. They have some kind of motivation that's going to drive them to write something, whether it is to inform the reader, which is the first one. If you see a lot of facts and statistics, a lot of data presented, then the purpose is to try to inform you about a topic. If it's a made-up story, like a fictional story, the author's purpose is probably to entertain. Even if they accomplish that or not, they don't necessarily have to entertain you in order for the purpose to still be to entertain. But usually you will see this in a fictional, made-up story. The author might also try to persuade you into doing something. And the magic word with persuade is if you see the word if a lot in the paper. If you, as the reader, were to do this, then this would happen. So, inform and persuade can kind of overlap because if you're writing a persuasive piece, then you might use a lot of facts and data and statistics to try to win over your reader. But if at the end of the text, if in the last paragraph especially you feel like you're being hassled to do something, to take some kind of action, then the purpose is to persuade. Another purpose is to explain something. If you have like step-by-step directions on how to accomplish something, then the purpose could be to explain. If the text is mostly descriptive with lots of detail and there's no really other goal other than to describe something, then the purpose then would be to describe. An author might also propose a solution or have the reader take a stance, and this does overlap with persuade. But not only is the author trying to persuade you to do something, they have a clear-cut solution as to what you can do to solve a problem. So that's the difference between to persuade and to propose a solution. If the author gives a clear-cut solution to a problem. Also to evaluate and judge. And I'm going to go into more specifics with these in a minute. I'm going to show you what these look like. Inquire and explore next year, and especially your senior year during your research papers and English classes. This will be your purpose. You're going to take a topic and really explore it, research it, and look up things about it. So that would be the purpose there. And also express and reflect. And I think this is probably students' favorite because it's the easiest to write. But if you have a memory of something happened in your life and you want to express what happened and then reflect on how it changed you and what you learned from it, that would then be the purpose for this type of writing. Okay, let's look at this chart here. Um, Basically taking the six purposes or six of the purposes that we just talked about and going further into explanation and also showing you an example. Now, you should have this somewhere in your binder, which you probably have never even looked at it, but that's fine. Um, this just shows you, again, different times when you would use these purposes. So take a look at this chart here. Okay, also make sure that you copy this down below the two boxes. The three types of questions, the multiple choice question dealing with purpose might say something like this. For what purpose does the author use repetition in the text? Why is the author choosing to repeat certain lines and phrases? A, to inform the reader. B, to emphasize importance. C, to persuade the reader. Or D, to create confusion. Now, which one of those, I mean, you don't even have to read anything to think about this question and answer it correctly. Why would an author choose to repeat something over and over? I don't think it's to inform or persuade or create confusion. I think B is the obvious answer here, even without having to read anything. If you repeat something over and over, you have a reason for doing so, and it's probably to show how important something is. So I think B would be the answer regardless of what the text is. An example of a click question or a highlight question might say something like, click the sentence that shows the author's purpose. So if you're reading a passage and it has a lot of data in it, if the purpose is to inform, you would click on a sentence showing that statistic or that data. If it's to entertain, if you have like a sentence with dialogue or like something made up, a fictional character, you could click that. And then a constructed response question might look something like this. How does the author introduce, develop, and draw connections between ideas and events? Use examples to support your response. If you need to pause this in order to finish copying this on your blue paper, feel free to do so, but I am going to move on. Okay, so let's talk again about constructed responses. Again, you will have about 4 on your EOC. Something that I'm seeing here lately is that people are writing kind of informally, and you want to sound as smart as possible when you write your constructed responses. So the tip for the day is to use formal tone. Don't use cliches. Don't use vague statements. Be very specific in what you're trying to say. I'm going to go over more specifics here. Okay, don't use slang words. Like, don't use guy, dude, chick, y'all, sup, or other words like that because that doesn't make you sound very smart. This is an example. I've shown you guys this before, but this is an example of a literary analysis that one of my seniors did. They said, Rothgar seems like a cool dude, but I would not want him to be my leader. Beowulf is a straightforward bad A. You do not want to write like this in your constructed responses. Also, don't use idioms or trite expressions, meaning a lot of phrases that are used over and over and over and really have no unique quality to them. Like, look at this example. Rothgard is a pretty good guy when the going is good, but when the crap hits the fan, he falls to pieces. For example, he's cool when the party's in full swing, but when Grendel comes in busting up the place, he loses all control. That is not good writing. Don't do that. Okay, the last thing that I want to go over are the different types of figurative language and fictional elements. Now, these are also in your study Bibles. We went over a lot of these last week when we did poetry, but I know that they're going to be on the EOC, so I want to spend just a few minutes, lastly, to go over these. Metaphor and simile are basically the same thing. That is when you compare two things that are not normally alike, but when you compare them, it makes sense. It has this great effect on the reader. The only difference is a metaphor compares two things directly. Look at the example. His hands were bulldozers moving the soul. You're comparing his hands to bulldozers. A simile is when you use the word like or as. Her eyes sparkled like 10-carat diamonds. Hyperbole is when you exaggerate something to create this great effect on the reader. If I were to say, I ask you 500 times to sit down. Now, I might have only asked you 10 times, but I feel like I've asked you as many times as 500. So that is an exaggerated effect there. And then personification, you see the word person. Personification is when the author gives something that's not living human qualities. The sunfish were dancing the tango in the pond. Something else that I'm sure that you can use on the EOC, especially in a constructed response, is maybe an author writes in such vivid detail that you're able to picture it in your head. And that is what imagery is. Imagery is language that appeals to the reader's five senses, whether it's how it looks, smells, tastes, sounds like, etc. Here's an example. Desolate and lone all night on the lake where the fog trails and the mist creeps. So we have some personification in there with the mist creeping, but you can see this like nice, lonely, quiet place. Onomatopoeia is a word that describes a sound that something makes. The barn door screeches when we open it. And then the last thing that I want to point out is rhyme scheme. And really, rhyme scheme is easy because you don't have to read or understand poetry to pick out rhyme scheme. The only thing you need to look at are the last words of each line. Sun, red, done, and head. And you designate a letter of the alphabet to show the rhyme scheme. So the first line automatically gets A because that's the beginning of the alphabet. So sun would get A. Red does not rhyme with sun, so we would give it B. Done. Well, that rhymes with sun, so we're going to give that A again. And then head rhymes with red, so we're going to give that B. So the rhyme scheme of this poem is A, B, A, B. And the final thing, you might see the word refrain. And that is usually just a part of a poem that is repeated at intervals. Usually it's like a chorus of a song, but re means repeated. So refrain is a phrase that's repeated. Okay, we talked about symbolism yesterday, but a symbol is an object used to represent something else. So like if you're reading a story about an outlaw and he's got a gun, that might symbolize his proof of manhood, toughness, tough guy. The tone, 100% promise you that that will be asked on your EOC. Tone is the author's emotional state of mind or attitude about a subject. Now, you might be thinking, well, how am I supposed to know how the author feels when he writes something? Well, he's going to give you clues in the text that give you an idea. So let's look at this example. The once bustling midway of the fairgrounds was now empty and trash-laden. The tone used by this author would be sad because the fair had ended. Alliteration, let me go back. What's going on? Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds. So you can see here, yes, garbed all in green was the gallant rider. You hear the G sound repeated, and the reason that people use alliteration is to create this musical effect or to emphasize certain words. And you often hear this in advertisements and commercials, probably without realizing it, but it just sounds so nice to the ear, you're kind of drawn into it instantly. Dialect is the way someone speaks according to the region that they live in, or maybe their race or ethnic group. You can see this, it says, seen my lady home last night. Jump back, honey, jump back. I hear this soulful southern person as I read this. Okay, I have some videos, but instead of showing you within this video, I'm just going to link them to the form below. So I want you to watch. There's probably going to be about 6 or 7 little sub videos that illustrate purpose and figurative language. So I'm going to end here, and please watch the other videos, and then I want you to complete the rest of the form. You are not going to be taking a quiz using the Orange Book. Instead, I have put a passage up on the screen so you can kind of have practice looking at the screen and selecting answers. So I want you to fill out the rest of the form. It will be graded. It will be submitted. So the answers that you submit are graded, unlike the practice benchmark that we took earlier this year. So go ahead and do that. Don't forget your homework, and if you have any questions, I'm probably looking at you right now from behind, so you can just raise your hand and ask me. Okay.